Spooky says, I'd be first if it wasn't for all these other people. Clever. 1,000 pine points to Spooky. See, that's all you need to do. That's all you need to do is just be clever. And you can earn pine points. Redeemable. 1 million pine points gets you an all-expense-paid trip to the luxurious Tropicana Casino Resort with me. Hey, Ranch Elder, 1,000 pine points to you as well for being first. As most of you know, I was on vacation for a long time, and when this debate happened, I didn't see it. I didn't watch almost anything. And so when I got back, I didn't even know this took place, this debate between Aaron Ra and Michael Jones, who's my neighbor, actually. By the way, fireworks in Tucson last night started many fires. It's like, why in the world have fireworks in the desert? That's the stupidest thing ever. But it was a big fire that I saw. But speaking of stupid, I actually think that this debate was stupid. I'm going to use that word, stupid. And not so much because of the guys participating in it. I think this debate was doomed from the start. And it's because of the topic. The topic is Christianity dangerous? That was the title. And I have skimmed this. I always go to the part where the two people are interacting at the end, and I skip all the prologue stuff. So I have not heard what Aaron Ra is going to say here in the beginning, and I have not heard what Michael's going to say. But I did watch a little bit of, and I know the timestamps of when they interact together. But what I'm going to be looking out for in this debate is, are they going to define true Christianity? What is Christianity? Is that going to be defined? Is the term dangerous even going to be defined? Like, what do you mean by dangerous? Now, that one, most people know have an intuitive feel what's dangerous and what's not. But to have a debate, is Christianity dangerous? I'm just going to say it's a stupid topic. And who put this on? The Bible and Beer Consortium. So if this is not, maybe it was clear to these guys beforehand exactly what this title means. And I'm going to be listening for what exactly it means. But if it's not clarified, I think it's just absolutely ridiculous and stupid. Now, why am I saying that? Because of this. And I purposely made this to make this point. Is water dangerous? Is hydrogen cyanide in solution dangerous? And here's the kicker. Now, again, I don't know what Aaron Ra, what his strategy here is, but is Islam dangerous? That's the beauty, because I don't know what Michael's going to say, but whatever he says in opposition that Christianity is not dangerous, how can we now apply that to Islam? And Christians, would you feel comfortable applying that to Islam? Oh man, this would be slick. I know I don't debate, but this would have been so. Well, I would never have agreed to debate on this topic because I think the topic is just stupid. So, is water dangerous? Of course it is, if used incorrectly. Is water great for you? Can you even survive without it? No, you need water. Water can be very unharmful, not dangerous. So it depends. Is hydrogen cyanide dangerous? Yes, it can be terribly dangerous, but it can be totally safe as well. It depends on how you use it. Hydrogen cyanide, I think, is used in photography, and it's used in as a precursor to a lot of other things in organic chemistry. Like, without it, you can't make other things. Like, I used to work in chelation. I was an analytical chemist. Actually, when I got my bachelor's degree, my uncle is a PhD in chemistry, and we did, there's only one good use for chelation, and that is to remove heavy metals from the blood. I shouldn't say only, but... And anyhow, hydrogen cyanide is used as a precursor for some of those chelating products. So it depends, right? So anybody who says that Christianity is not dangerous is a fool. Anybody who says Christianity is dangerous is a fool. Oh, I love saying stuff like that. Because it depends. It depends. And again, whatever answer you give to defend Christianity as not being dangerous, man, I would be so tempted to slap that right on any other religion. And without even hearing this debate, I think, well, I'm trying to think how much I'm going to preface this. Yeah, if it were me, and if I was forced to by gunpoint to debate this silly topic, I would really try to define Christianity, give clear-cut examples of how people call themselves Christians and yet cause harm, and then try to find points of agreement where this is dangerous. And I would readily submit that yes, there are some cases, sometimes where Christianity is not only not dangerous, it's actually good. That Christianity can save people's lives. So then, on almost every debate topic, this would be my problem, because I'm not stupid. There's there's going to be situations where you have exceptions to almost everything. So maybe, how would you improve this debate topic? Is Christianity more dangerous than not? That is what the topic should have been. What's the net effect of Christianity, good or bad? But then again, you got to define your standard of good and bad and so forth. But yeah, is Christianity dangerous? That's just a ridiculous topic. Okay, so I've vented, and I got 64 people in the room now, so now we can finally watch it. I know from experience, Aaron Ra talks fast, so I don't know if I can even go 2x here. Let's see if I can get away with, that's 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. By the way, I'm using, what's the name of this extension? Video Speed Controller extension for Chrome. Use that, and you can see in the top here, the top left, look what I can do. 1.2, 1.1, 1.3. I can speed it up, slow it down. You're welcome. This will make your life so much better, because you can speed things. You can go up to 4.4, whatever. You can speed videos up, slow them down, and your life becomes way more efficient. So I'm going to go R and Raw 1.2. Here we go. Is Christianity dangerous?
It's going to take a minute. I wasn't warned that he was going to announce me, so I haven't even got my stuff set up yet. All right, so uno momento, por favor. Is Christianity dangerous? It has been called the bloodiest religion in all human history, even compared to Islam. Just look at the...
Okay, yeah, I am going to preface this. So whatever Aaron Ross says here, replace Christianity with water, hydrogen cyanide, or even Islam. This will be fun. And a lot of things Aaron Ross is going to say is just going to collapse at that point. Now, and I'm going to be consistent, do this exact same thing for Michael Jones when he defends or whatever he's going to say. You replace Christianity with water, hydrogen cyanide, or Islam. And you're going to say that, and I think you're going to quickly see that this whole debate becomes...
A series of barbaric atrocities known as the Holy Wars of Christians versus Muslims. Yeah. One moment, please. Okay. When the Washington Times asked which religion is the most violent, they noted that Christians caused 50 times more violent deaths than Muslims just over the last century. But in all fairness, there are more Muslims than there are more Christians than there are Muslims, if you accept Catholics as Christian. And Christians don't usually kill each other over religion, at least not anymore. The British Raj, or Crown Rule of India, could be said to be Christians versus Hindus too, but the purpose of that conflict wasn't spiritual or theological, it was purely political, imperialism. Likewise, Stalin, who was an atheist, had millions of people killed, but not in the name of atheism. That too was political, totalitarianism, wherein the government prohibits opposition parties, restricts individual objections to state politics, exercises extreme control over public and private life. A totalitarianism is the form of government that Christian dominionists actually want and are trying to achieve. They say they want less government, but they really want a grossly overbloated military and militarized police force, which also penalizes expression of uncomfortable opinions, imprisons protesters, and denigrates the press as fake news, while allowing unfair religious privileges and unjust exceptions, and governing every aspect of your personal life, especially your sex life, restricting your practice and preference of partners. That's way too much government for me, and I'm on the left. Everyone thinks Islam is more violent because the Quran says to kill the infidel, but the Bible says that too in Deuteronomy 13 and 17, where you are to kill anyone, even a beloved friend or family member who doesn't believe in your God and dares suggest that you shouldn't either. Numbers 31 says whole communities can be slaughtered and their preteen children taken into sexual slavery simply for believing in other gods. And of course, Exodus 22 says, thou shalt not suffer.
Okay, I'm going to stop it here for a second. I would never take this tact. And I know a lot of atheists would say, why not, Doug? These are great points. Aaron Ra's bringing out all the heinous things in the Old Testament. None of this matters. Sorry, atheists listening, none of this matters, especially to the Christian. It's not going to impact them because that was way a long time ago. You got to look at the context. If only you knew, if only you understood how good slavery was back then. It's not that we have a new covenant. Christianity has a new covenant. None of this matters. We're talking about Christianity here, true Christianity. What Aaron Ra should, at this very beginning part, talk about is what in the world is Christianity. He should be going, maybe he will. Maybe he'll go into all the different sects of Christianity and all the different views and
which to live. I'm sure no one expects the Spanish Inquisition to come up in this debate. Mark Twain remarked on that, saying, during many ages there were witches. The Bible said so. The Bible commanded that they should not be allowed to live. Therefore, the church, after 800 years, gathered up its halters, thumbscrews, and firebrands, and set about its holy work in earnest. She worked hard at it night and day during 9 centuries and imprisoned, tortured, hanged, and burned whole hordes and armies of witches, and washed the Christian world clean with their foul blood. Then it was discovered there was no...
Don't get me wrong. What Aaron Ra has done in the past, not right here, by bringing up a lot of these heinous things that a lot of Christians are not even aware of, and they hear it for the first time, and the way Aaron Ra delivers it is very powerful and very effective. But in a debate situation like this, well, I guess rhetorically you could say that it's effective, but is Christianity dangerous? All you have to say is, well, but that's not representing true Christianity. Done. Or how do you know that this is the right version, that this caused people to do things? Correlation is not causation, stuff like that. I could easily just bash everything Aaron Ra is saying right here.
Such thing as witches and never had been. One does not know whether to laugh or cry. Penn State University professor of religious history Philip Jenkins says that Islamic scriptures in the Quran were actually far less bloody and less violent than those in the Bible, that the Bible frequently promotes genocide more than 70 times. Consequently, the history of Christianity is strewn with genocide justified. He said that it is often used, for example, in American stories of the confrontation with Indians. Not just is it legitimate to kill Indians, but you are violating God's law if you do not. Professor Jenkins acknowledges that Christianity is not like that anymore, owing to what he calls holy amnesia, where believers conveniently forget or simply fail to notice any of the indefensible atrocities in their supposedly holy writ, as if all that inhuman evil reaped at the hands of righteous believers in the name of God was merely symbolic.
It's not just that Christians that forget about some of the heinous things Christians have done in the past. I tell you, a lot of Christians, this is not the God I know. This is not the Jesus I know that you read in the Old Testament. And they struggle with some of the things in the Old Testament and some of the history of Christianity, but it's their personal relationship. What I know is the Jesus who is love.
Another example of Christian genocide is when the Nazis tried to exterminate the Jews in the Holocaust of World War II. Hitler declared, both publicly and privately, that the anti-Semitism of his new Christian social movement, as he called it, was based on religious ideas instead of racial knowledge, and that his initial violent attacks against the Jews in the Kristallnacht was inspired by the anti-Semitism of Reverend Martin Luther, father of Protestant Christianity. Hitler also rejected evolution outright in Mein Kampf, wherein he declared himself to be a creationist, and he ordered all of Darwin's books to be burnt. Hitler believed in racial superiority and eugenics. Darwin did not. Gore Vidal famously observed that more people have been killed in the name of Jesus Christ than in any other name in the history of the world. Christian history is rife with centuries of near-continuous overlapping wars between Orthodox Christians and Catholics, Catholics versus Protestants, Protestants against Puritans, and Puritans against Quakers, all of them killing each other in the name of the same God they all share. How dangerous is that? If you're born in a Protestant area, you'd better be Protestant until the Inquisition comes.
Yeah, and so I still have this thing: is water dangerous here? I could find a statistic where water has killed more people through drowning than another accident or whatever, and say, look how dangerous water is. if I'm on the opposite side of Aaron here, this is the tact I'd take, and then I could say, well, it's just because people's misuse of water, that's what's making it dangerous. It's people's misuse of true Christianity. So again, none of this matters what Aaron's saying from a debate perspective.
Comes along.
But again, it's stacked against him. In fact, it's stacked against Michael as well. Because if it were me, I probably would have done the clever technique of making the status quo, the default position that Christianity is. I would put the burden on Michael to show that being a Christian causes less harm, and to provide studies for that. And maybe he actually does that. I don't know. We'll find out.
Then you'd better be good at lying. If you're born in a Catholic country, you'd better be Catholic. There's no room for analysis. Either one is a thought crime for which you're not allowed to use reason. You're not allowed to think about it or question what you're told to believe, because for most of history, any of you could be imprisoned for your opinion or executed on the capital crimes of blasphemy, heresy, or apostasy, which in a secular society are not crimes at all. Fortunately, the founding fathers of this nation knew that every time religion has ever had rule over law, it has historically always resulted in violations of both life and liberty, where righteousness results in a perversion of justice. For example, the Salem witch trials demonstrated precisely why supernatural claims cannot be considered a valid influence over criminal court case or public policy addressing real-world issues. That's why our founding fathers established this country not on Judeo-Christian principles, but on secular values, such that in this country, blasphemy is not a crime, it's a right.
Yeah, and I just did a video yesterday, since it was July 4th. A great big percentage of Christians who just flatly disagree with everything Aaron Ra says. As a matter of fact, no, this country was founded on Christian principles, and by mostly Christians. And so, yeah, everything you just said, Aaron, is wrong. Again, I would never take this type of tactic on a debate like this. I would use things like, is water dangerous? Is hydrogen dangerous? Is hydrogen cyanide? Is Islam dangerous? And talk about the use and misuse, and then get the other side to admit, yeah, there's a ton of misuse, and then let's work together to figure out how not to misuse it, how to use Christianity properly. Now, as an atheist, I could say Christianity could be used properly as a placebo effect to help people stop committing suicide or help them with their anger issues and stuff like that. Help them with their anxieties. Oh, Christianity is great for anxieties. Imagine people who have screwed up so badly, made so many mistakes in their life. Christianity is a great religion for having that clean slate. It's not the only religion that has a clean slate type attitude, but that whole clean slate, born again, it's cathartic. It's very beneficial to one's psychology. But the question is Christianity a net benefit?
Yet inter-Christian bloodshed continued even in the United States despite the First Amendment with Executive Order Number 44. That was signed by the governor of Missouri in 1838. It allowed American militias to hunt down and kill whole families of men, women, and children. And we're not talking about Native Americans either, but white people. It was called the Mormon Execution Order. It's the reason the Mormons had to flee Illinois and Missouri to make a new home in the deserts of Utah. That law was not taken off the books until 1976, during my lifetime. So Mormons who know their history understand better than most Christians do why you can't have freedom of religion without freedom from religion, meaning that the state shouldn't have an official religion, because then believers in every other faith become second-class citizens to be oppressed, subjugated, and in many instances killed. It is true that
that happens in every tribe. You're not part of my tribe, reason to oppress. Christianity, Mormonism is just another tribe.
Christianity was suppressed as illegal once upon a time in the very beginning. It was blasphemous to the Jews, and the Romans, who had been tolerant of many provincial religions until then, referred to the early Christians as...
Remember, the debate topic here is not, is religion dangerous? It's, is Christianity dangerous?
Atheists, because they lacked theism, being no more than a heretical cult of self-deluded mystics at that time. But once they had a convert in command, Constantine, all that changed. And those renunciate pacifists suddenly turned into holy warriors of the prosperity gospel. Once Christianity was legalized, it was soon illegal to be anything else. Because every religion is relatively humble, charitable, and kind in the minority, but they all become criminally oppressive in the majority. We see that with the Islamification of Europe today, as with the Christianization of Europe centuries ago. And I fear we might see a resurgence of that, because there are more dangers to Christianity than just the hazards of religious war. The threat of Christian dominionism is the reason that I became an activist. Back around Y2K, I heard from religious extremists bragging about how their congregation voted exactly as their preacher instructed, along with a coalition of other churches illegally voting as a bloc to position certain evangelical judges and senators and so on in what was later to reveal.
Like, I don't disagree with a lot of what Aaron's saying here, but as a debate tactic, what he should say, he should concede something here. Now, I know most professional debaters say never concede anything to your opponent, but rhetorically, oh, that's powerful. If you want to win debates rhetorically in the eyes of the audience, concede as much as you can. And so Aaron should say stuff like, give specific examples of how Christianity has benefited society with art and music, poetry. Go into, I tell you, that scores so many brownie points for the Christians listening.
To be the wedge strategy. Although the people I was hearing from at that time were working with Reconstructionists from the Chalcedon Institute who wanted to replace our democratic republic with a theocracy that would enforce Levitical law. If you think Sharia law is bad, read Leviticus and imagine our government enforcing that. This country would be worse than any Islamic state where you can be executed simply for working on weekends and where you are literally not even free to think your own thoughts. Christianity is just one of many religions, and all religions are faith-based belief systems, meaning that they have required beliefs and prohibited beliefs, things you have to believe or be damned if you don't, and things you're forbidden to think and will be punished if you do. Whereas a secular society allows and encourages free thought and the free exchange of ideas, which Christianity cannot endure or allow.
Yeah, and see, some Christians listening would say, well, Aaron, my version of Christianity allows free thought. It's free will, free choice. You can accept it or not. You can question it all you want. My God's a loving God. He's not going to smite you for questioning him. And another version of Christianity might disagree with that, but the real issue is, what is Christianity? Which still hasn't been defined, by the way.
Even the conservative Senator Barry Goldwater worried about our current political situation, saying, if and when these preachers get control of the Republican Party, and they're sure trying hard to do so, it's going to be a terrible damn problem. Fortunately, frankly, these people frighten me. Politics and governing demand compromise, but these Christians believe they are acting in the name of God, and so they can't and won't compromise. And that's another reason Christianity is dangerous, because if you elect candidates who are strong in their faith and firm in their convictions, then you've chosen leaders and judges who have already decided your fate with a stoic conviction that no logic, reason, or evidence will ever correct. Faith means they will not be reasoned with. If people think that God's law is higher...
Faith means they will not be reasoned with. Yeah, I don't know if I would have gone there either, because most Christians will, a lot of Christians will just disagree with that definition of faith, and it's just going to cause people in the audience who might be fence sitters just to turn off at that point.
Higher than human law, then there are Christians who believe that they are above the law. The only Christian principles that actually did influence the establishment of this otherwise secular nation was slavery and misogyny, which is why women were denied the vote until only 100 years ago. Both of these errors had to be corrected, which was hard to do because the good book promotes things that we know to be immoral. Confederate President Jefferson Davis said that slavery was the main issue behind the Civil War, over and above everything else. He said that slavery was established by decree of Almighty God, being sanctioned in the Bible in both Testaments from Genesis.
But, I think this is the wrong tactic, because a Christian can just easily say that, or the debate, what Michael could easily say is, Christianity didn't cause slavery. In fact, he might even, I don't know if he's going to say this, but it's because of Christianity that slavery in the United States ended when it did, or as soon as it did.
To Revelation. So the bloodiest conflict ever in American soil could have been avoided entirely were it not for Jesus' endorsement of slavery. Christianity has been used to promote every type of prejudice, beginning with Jesus himself, saying he was here only for his chosen people, denying his gospel to the Gentiles, and dismissing Samaritans with a racial slur.
That is true. Christians listening, what Aaron just said, that Jesus himself said, I came for the Jews, not for the Gentile first.
In 1493, Pope Alexander VI issued the Doctrine of Discovery, which stated that any land not already owned and controlled by Christians was to be discovered, or rather conquered, by Christians. Existing regimes were to be overthrown, their resources exploited, and their prior inhabitants enslaved and converted in order to further strengthen the church. In 1550, the church debated whether the native inhabitants of the Greater Antilles were fully human, as their one defender insisted, or, as his four missionary opponents declared, that they were instead natural slaves and soulless talking animals in human guise. It's not just centuries ago, either. Evangelist Bob Jones said that if you are against segregation and racial separation, you are against God. Oral Roberts held the same position. I was a boy when the anti-miscegenation law was struck down in 1967. Had I been...
Okay, I'm debating whether or not just to fast forward, because Aaron Ra's just giving example after example after example of bad things that have happened in the name of Christianity. Do I fast forward this? Yeah, I'm not going to fast forward yet.
Been of my father's generation, then the marriage I have now would have been illegal because of my wife's Vietnamese ancestry and because of the previous trial judge's Christian beliefs. He ruled that Almighty God created the races white, black, yellow, Malay, and red, and he placed them on separate continents. The fact that he separated the races shows that he did not intend for the races to mix. Ignoring, for the moment, that none of this raving insanity counts as fact and should never have been uttered by a judge, understand that his exact statement or sentiment is still repeated on the websites of the Ku Klux Klan, who declare that they are exclusively Christian creationists.
Mr. Pluto the dog asked a great question. Do you think you can persuade the conned, death-fearing theist with careful words at Pine Creek? No, I don't think I can. I think I can, over time, affect people. I was asked once on a Blab platform. There was a really hardcore pastor, dogmatic. What was his name? He was from Alabama. What would change his mind? I said, give him $10 million and move him to Denmark for 10 years. And then maybe, just maybe, he'll shift a scotch. You got to remember, our belief systems, a lot of what we believe, we don't even know why we believe it. And it's so complex, and there's so many causes and effects. This is why I like street epistemology, because it tries to get to the root of it. Like, what's the main factors? And so, yeah. But in a debate like this, if Aaron Ra is trying to be an effect, if he's trying to affect people in the audience who legitimately could be swayed one way or another, is Christianity more or less dangerous? That's the way it should be phrased. And what's the net benefit or cost? Not just, is it dangerous? That's a stupid title. He should spend equal time praising Christianity as putting it down. And then what he should do is say how one can achieve the things Christianity has achieved without Christianity.
Who do not believe in evolution. Like all Abrahamic religions, Christianity suffers from and imposes sexual repression such that violent scenes are graphically enhanced and celebrated, but scenes of mere nudity must be censored as pornographic. How can one even pretend to support family values if you think that breastfeeding a baby should be done in the unclean conditions of a public toilet rather than at table number 5 in the company of family and friends? Who cares if it offends some guy who calls his wife mother? That's why we circumcise baby boys, which is a pointless and potentially dangerous permanent mutilation.
That's a great example right there of circumcision. Like, it's pretty hard to say that circumcision would exist without the idea of deities and gods and religion. But then the question, has it caused more harm than good? Scientifically, I don't know. That's a really hard one to answer. But like, really, if there was no religion, do you think people would chop off foreskins of babies?
Of the most sensitive organ without anesthesia or consent of a minor, and for no good reason but only to diminish his potential appreciation of sex. An indefensible act of evil. Protestant preachers are now catching up to Catholic priests in terms of constant confirmations of child molestation, implying that attempts at abstinence or even just prudishness, repulsing at one of our strongest biological drives, not surprisingly distorts one into fiendish perversion, if they weren't already that way to begin with.
Yeah, I want to try to keep a theme here. It would be hard, it would be difficult, but Aaron Ra could probably talk. He's talked for 15 minutes now. He could talk about 15 minutes of the dangers of water, all the ways water could kill you. He could talk 15 minutes on the dangers of hydrogen cyanide. And just like he's talking about all the dangers and problems of Christianity, of course he can do that for Islam as well, and water and hydrogen cyanide. And so the point is not, is it dangerous or not? It's in what situations, is it a net benefit? What is it more likely to... It's same with the gun debate, right? It's, if you have I think there's 300 million guns in the United States. If you could run a study where you just take all those guns out, look at the deaths, put them all back in, look at the deaths, and do a study like that. Is it more a net benefit or a net cost?
With. The few who do brag about having a healthy sex life also say that they hate gays, even though they're often caught having gay sex. The Bible Belt is also the meth belt, the abortion belt, and the gay porn belt with self-hating homophobes throughout fundamentalism. Much of the bigotry is based on false dichotomies between good and evil, male and female, gay or straight, seemingly unable to accept any concept that isn't simply...
See, like, rhetorically right now, on a debate content thing, none of this is going to matter, I don't think. But rhetorically, the issue is rhetorically. Is Aaron Ra doing the right thing rhetorically? the people that are in the audience going, yeah, preach it, Aaron, they're probably not Christians, and if they are Christians, they're like middle of the road, and they're probably not serious, and not the type of Christian that Aaron Ra is even concerned about, my guess. So he's not really going to impact what I think he should be impacting, and that is maybe the more middle of the road, moderate type seekers trying to figure out, should I be a Christian or not? I think he should be talking more about the misuse of Christianity and even some of the good things about Christianity.
Binary. So trans people and queer folk might even be killed in the streets because the book of Leviticus says they're an abomination and their blood will be upon them. And of course, it also says not to get tattoos or eat shellfish either, but cherry-picking hypocrites don't pay attention to that part.
Okay, I really am convinced that Aaron Ra is just going to keep talking about all the bad stuff about Christianity, which most of my audience listening right now already know. And most of Christians watching me right now don't want to know or don't care to know or already know and don't care. So let's go to Michael. Sorry, Aaron. I think I get the gist of what you're saying. Okay, I have not heard this before, but what I'm wanting to hear from Michael, if the topic, and again, I'm assuming the topic on this screen is right, is Christianity dangerous? I would like to hear from Michael what Christianity is. I think I know what he believes it is because I've interviewed him. But I'm curious to say if he's going to give a clear presentation what Christianity is. Because how can you say something's dangerous or not if you don't even know what it is?
Well, I have been looking forward to this for months, and I'd like to thank Aaron Ra for agreeing to the debate and the Bible and Beer Consultorium for hosting tonight. I'd also like to thank James Kunz in the back for helping fund my trip here. And I'd also like to thank the channel Rational Perspectives, formerly known as DRES83, for helping me prep for tonight. And with that out of the way, I want to dive right in. There seems to be some confusion about the topic of tonight. The topic is not, are Christians dangerous? If that was the topic tonight, in one sense, many Christians would probably say yes, because our own Bible says all humans are sinful, depraved, and that we seek to fill our own selfish desires. And that is the reason we need Christianity. So in one sense, I'm sure plenty of Christians would agree, yeah, at times Christians can be dangerous. In another sense, Aaron might have to admit Christians are not dangerous because he felt safe to come to tonight's event, and I don't see a bulletproof vest on him. But that is not the topic tonight. The topic tonight is Christianity dangerous?
Okay, this is interesting. The topic is not, are Christians dangerous? The topic is Christianity dangerous? Can you have Christianity without Christians? Can you have Christianity without people? I'm trying to think, is water dangerous? Is hydrogen cyanide dangerous? Is Islam dangerous? Water is not dangerous. It's the chemical reactions of the hydrogen-oxygen bond when it displaces the covalent bond of oxygen, O2, in the lungs. That's almost like what Michael's saying here. He's taking it off the H2O and putting it into more the chemical reaction. Is that what he's doing? Because Christianity is a thing, it's a concept, it's an idea. Can you separate that idea from the practice and still have it? Okay, and then let's take, actually, this is fun. Let me back that up a second.
It's safe to come to tonight's event, and I don't see a bullet.
The topic is not, are Muslims dangerous? The topic is Islam dangerous? I wonder how that changes things from the Christian perspective. If they're listening to this, and imagine Michael Jones as a Muslim right now. It's actually not that hard. He got a nice beard. Sorry, Michael. Okay, so Michael Jones is a Muslim right now, and he's saying, the topic is not, are Muslims dangerous? The topic is Islam dangerous? Now, Christians, be honest with me. How are you feeling about this right now? What would you say right now to Muslim Michael Jones? who's saying, no, the topic's not whether Muslims are dangerous, it's whether Islam is dangerous. Wouldn't you as a Christian be saying, but wait a minute, there's a core idea of Islam, and with that Muslims do because they're Muslims and they're following Islam, like maybe they have a mistranslation of it, but they're doing what they're doing because they're Muslim and they're following the core precepts, what they believe of an idea called Islam. Wouldn't you say that, Christians? I think some of you would.
Bulletproof vest on them. But that is not the topic tonight. The topic tonight is Christianity dangerous? Aaron has listed several examples of Christians and some people who are not Christians who have done bad things. He only had to sit in one church service and know that Christians sin every day. Aaron has agreed to debate the affirmative tonight, so he has to show that Christianity necessarily is the cause of these bad things that Christians have done, and I will argue this cannot be demonstrated.
Okay, I don't know what... Okay, this is really interesting to me. If what Michael said is true, it's over. It's done. I don't even know why you go on. Because the bar, the standard that's been placed here is next to impossible to establish. A cause and effect relationship? Let me rewind that.
To debate the affirmative tonight, so he has to show that Christianity necessarily is the cause of these bad things that Christians have done.
Yeah, see, if I was in Aaron Ra's shoes, I would have hopefully saw that line coming and saying, my goal here is not to demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that Christianity is demonstrably the cause for certain things. It's to show maybe some correlations between the misuse of Christianity and how prevalent it is. And on net, since we can get the good stuff outside of Christianity, and we don't need Christianity to get that good stuff, and yet it seems like some of the specific bad stuff we get from Christianity, like here's an example that Aaron Ra, I think, should have said and didn't. And maybe he will. I don't know. But he should, when he's talking to Michael at the end, he should look Michael in the eyes and say, look, Michael. In fact, oh man, I would have been good at this. I would look Michael in the eyes and say, my sister thought she was healed from MS and refused medical care because of it. Is that dangerous? When she hears her pastor say, you've been healed from multiple sclerosis, and refuses to sign up with the MS Society of Canada because of it, because she's healed. Why sign up for MS if you don't have MS? Well, Christians are dangerous, Doug, but Christianity is not dangerous.
And I will argue this cannot be demonstrated. From watching numerous of Aaron's past debates, including one of his recent debates with Tyler Vela, he has attempted to argue certain core tenets of Christianity have dangerous effects. And he has argued that the promotion of faith in the Bible causes people to become less rational or intelligent, in so many of his own words. From viewing numerous of his lectures, his reasoning seems to be Bible verse says X, Aaron interpret X to mean Y, and most Christians probably also or must interpret X to mean Y, and Y has dangerous effects.
This is brilliant by Michael. Good job. This is a form called steel manning. Instead of straw manning, steel manning.
So, for example, Aaron reads a verse that encourages faith among Christians. Aaron then interprets this verse to mean rejecting evidence and reason and believing blindly. And most Christians probably or must think this way, and this has horrible consequences in society. I will argue none of these can be demonstrated. They're all leaps in logic, and they're completely unjustified. Many of Aaron's attempts to argue, or many of his attempts to interpret scripture passages are based on a misunderstanding of...
Okay, now if you're a Christian listening, again, please, atheists, don't be offended what I'm about to say, but I don't really care too much about the choir right now. I'm talking to the Christians who are going to be listening right now. They're hiding, they're lurking, or they're watching in the replay. I'm talking to Michael, or if he ever watches this. Imagine Michael saying the exact same thing about the Quran. The Quran says X. Muslims interpret X to mean Y. Most Muslims must also interpret X to mean Y. Y causes dangerous effects. Islam encourages faith, must mean rejecting evidence and reason, and so forth. And so now, if you put it, just change everything, Bible to Quran, if you're a Christian listening, keep that in your mind and then listen to what Michael says and see if you have if you have the exact same response to what Michael says, if everything was flipped to Islam, then good for you. You're being consistent. But if things start to sound different to you, what Michael is about to say, and again, I don't know what Michael's about to say, but I'm just saying, really work hard to take whatever Michael says about Christianity and apply it to Islam and see if it sits the same way for you. My guess is it won't.
Of the context. And even if he is right in his interpretation, there is no statistical evidence the majority of Christians agree with him or even have to. On top of that, he has to show empirically that this leads to negative results in society. Random examples from his experience or from the media or the news don't demonstrate that. I could find numerous examples of atheists, feminists, or humanists doing bad things, but it would be absurd for me to make the leap in logic and say this means atheism or humanism caused these bad things. So, for example, there is one study out there called Mentalizing Defects Constrain Belief in a Personal God, which shows an association between atheism and autism. But it would be ridiculous for me to suggest atheism somehow causes autism. In psychology, this is called an attribution error, when you unjustifiably attribute an effect to something. By RN listing examples of Christians doing bad things, this is actually not proof Christianity caused these bad things. One researcher in his paper, To Err in Their Ways, the attribution...
Remember, think Islam. If you're a Christian listening, every time he says Christianity, think Islam. So it's not Islam that causes Muslims to chop people's heads off.
Bias of new atheists has specifically called out new atheists for committing...
Now, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with what Michael's saying yet. What I'm saying is, does it sit the same way for the Christian listening? Does it resonate the same way when we apply this to Islam? Or even hydrogen cyanide or water?
This fallacious reasoning quite often. So a lot of the argument Aaron made can be pointed out as nothing more than attribution errors. He has to demonstrate for us that Christianity, as a form of intrinsic religiosity, is the direct cause of these alleged harmful effects.
Yeah, it is the direct cause. Like that standard, that burden is so high, I wouldn't even attempt to try it. I would just look at correlation and say, well, it really appears in certain things, aspects, yes, maybe in others, no. It's a case-by-case basis.
Now I could go through and list a bunch of nice Bible verses or list a bunch of nice things Christians have done, but Art and I would be talking past one another. Therefore, I propose an area of mutual agreement. Science. Because the fact remains that numerous psychologists and social scientists have looked into the subject to see if Christianity, which is a form of intrinsic religiosity, does correlate with negative social behaviors or lower quality of life. And the overwhelming consensus in scientific literature is resounding no.
Okay, now Christians listening, would you say if Michael was talking about Islam, would you say the same thing? Would this resonate with you? So imagine Michael is a Muslim, and he what's that guy's name? Is it Reza Aslan? Reza Aslan? Oh, this is good. Because I know a lot of conservative-leaning Christians don't like, what's his name? Raza? Someone help me in the chat. Aslan? I think a lot of Christians don't like him. But Michael's being him right now. I think almost to a T, saying the exact same things. So picture Michael Jones as a Muslim defending Islam right now and saying this.
Science. Because the fact remains that numerous psychologists and social scientists have looked into the subject to see if Christianity, which is a form of intrinsic religiosity, does correlate with negative social behaviors or lower quality of life. And the overwhelming consensus in scientific literature is resounding no.
It's a resounding no that Islam does not cause harmful effects according to science. Does that feel good for the Christians, the conservative type Christians listening right now? Probably not.
In fact, numerous studies show intrinsic religiosity does increase one's overall quality of life and has been positively associated with increased ethical behavior and overall well-being. Now, there will always be exceptions to the rule. Some studies do show religiosity is associated with various negative effects. But by and large, the consensus in peer-reviewed literature is intrinsic religiosity.
Okay, that brilliant, Michael. You made a concession there. You're basically saying sometimes yes. Let me rewind that. This is what Aaron Ross should have done. Exactly what I said Aaron Ross should have done, Michael's doing here.
Some studies do show religiosity is associated with various negative effects. But by and large, the consensus in peer-reviewed literature is intrinsic religiosity not only is not dangerous, but that is it associated with beneficial results in multiple.
So not, again, Christians, I know you're going to hate this, but I'm just going to pound this over and over again. Think of Islam.
But by and large, the consensus in peer-reviewed literature is intrinsic religiosity
Intrinsic Islam
not only is not dangerous,
not only is not dangerous,
but that is it associated with beneficial results in
but is associated with beneficial results. Now, how are you feeling right now?
multiple ways. Some studies even cite a causal relationship, which, and I'll note some of them. I'll mainly focus on meta-analyses, which take into account all the studies published on a particular topic to see what the general trend is. So there's one study, If You Love Me, Keep My Commandments.
Now, I don't know if Aaron does this, but if there's a back and forth at the end, this is what Aaron needs to do. He needs to, whatever Michael says about religiosity, but he's really talking about Christianity because the topic's about Christianity. Aaron should just slip in Islam. Now, I don't think it's going to affect Michael. Michael Jones is going to say, yeah, this applies to Islam as well. But it's a tremendous rhetorical use. It's a tremendous rhetorical device. The Christians watching are going to just, no, I don't want to say Islam is good.
Meta-analysis of the effects of religion on crime, which looked at 60 individual studies and found that intrinsic religiosity is a deterrent for crime. The average effect size was 0.12. Another study, Religion, Spirituality, and Physical Health in Cancer Patients, a meta-analysis, found religion was associated with the physical health of cancer patients, functional well-being, and improved physical symptoms.
Oh, actually, let me see that again. A meta-analysis found religion was associated with physical health of cancer patients, functional well-being, and improved physical symptoms. Okay, but was it religion that caused these good effects, Michael? Or was it the actions of the adherents of that religion? Remember, this is not about Christians. This is about Christianity. Remember what Michael said earlier? This is not about Christians. This is about Christianity. And this says, a meta-analysis found religion, Christianity, was associated with physical health of cancer patients' functional well-being. So why is it work in one direction, Michael, and not the other? If bad things happen, well, that's because those are Christians. We're talking about Christianity. But if good things happen, oh, that's because of Christianity, not the Christians. You see how it's like you set up, I think it's a one-way street for goodness and not for badness here. Again, this is what, if I was Aaron Ra, this is what I would focus on.
Physical health of cancer patients, functional well-being, and improved physical symptoms. Another paper from 1997, the Religious Orientation Scale, Review and Meta-Analysis of the Social Desirability Effects, found intrinsic religiosity, and I quote, tends to correlate with desirable variables. Mental health, altruism, religious commitment, and extrinsic religiosity correlates with that which is undesirable, prejudice, non-marital sex. Another study from 2015, Religion, Delinquency, and Drug Use, a meta-analysis, found religion had an inverse correlation with delinquency and drug use.
By the way, I would not push back on any of this. I'm slightly familiar with some of these studies because of my cousin Leon. I would say, well, it's not. See, Aaron Ra could use the exact some of the same language that Michael's using against him and saying, well, but no, this is not religion doing this. This is community. These are the effects. Community is causing this. Just like he says, it's not about Christians, it's about Christianity. No, it's not about religion or Christianity. It's about the community. That's what's really causing it. This is why it's just so complex. What exactly is causing what? Sometimes it's like, who knows what's first, the chicken or the egg? What's the actual, the root cause of things? But in my opinion, when people are associating with other people and encouraging other people and helping other people, it's a benefit to health. That's just, to me, it's almost, yeah.
A meta-analysis from 2003, Religiosity and Mental Health, a meta-analysis of recent studies, analyzed 34 studies and found aspects of intrinsic religiosity were associated with better mental health and found strong correlations between religiosity and mental health.
Yeah, so again, I'm going to keep pounding on the Christians listening, the Christians who love Michael Jones. Everything he's saying, I want you to think Islam, Islam, Islam. A meta-study analyzed 34 studies and found the aspects of intrinsic Islam were associated with better mental health, and Islam found the strong correlations between Islam and mental health. I think everything inside you is going to change. It's like, no, Doug, come on. It's talking about Christianity here, not Islam.
2001, a study titled Religion and Mental Health, Evidence for an Association, surveyed 850 studies and found that, and I quote, religious involvement is generally associated with greater well-being, less depression and anxiety, greater social support, and less substance abuse. Another meta-analysis, religious priming, a meta-analysis with a focus on prosociality, found that religious priming has robust effects across a variety of outcomes, including prosocial effects. These studies I just cited are meta-analyses, which again take into account numerous studies which have differing results. They collect the data, do a mathematical analysis to find the general trend, thus making the conclusions far more reliable.
So rhetorically, though, and maybe Michael's going to do this, I don't know, but Michael should now bring up some studies of where, like specific studies of where religiosity caused negative effects.
Now, I swear, I could spend the rest of my time going over study after study after study. There is a wealth of information on this topic, by and large, that demonstrates that there are positive associations and sometimes causation with intrinsic religiosity.
Positive associations and sometimes causations? How can you say causation? Just because it has a high enough R squared, Michael? What can you establish for your listeners, Michael? What does the R squared in the correlation meta-analysis have to be in order for you to say it's caused? Is it 0.99, 0.8, 0.7?
To claim that Christianity is dangerous, one has to tear down all of these studies and present their own studies that argue Christianity as a form of intrinsic religiosity does have dangerous effects. And as far as I can see from the peer-reviewed literature, that claim is scientifically unwarranted. So, as Aaron Ross said in his opening statements of 2018 with George Lujack, my position, it is dishonest to assert blind speculations.
Okay, so he's saying that Michael's saying he has all these scientific peer-reviewed journals that says that the effects of religion is good. But it's not Christians who cause these good effects, mental health and so forth. It's Christianity. It's not the adherents of the religion that cause these effects. It's the religion itself. Because remember, the topic is not about Christians. It's about Christianity. You see how this is kind of getting messy, Michael? It's like, how can you have one without the other? So if I was Aaron Ra, I would say that. And I would also, at the end, and I'm curious, I'm not bashing these guys because they might be just coming up around the corner, and so they're going to talk about these things. By the way, the definition of Christianity has still not come up here. The title is Christianity dangerous? And we still don't know what Christianity is.
So they were fact, but that is all religions do, and science is only concerned with what is supported by evidence, and what is not supported by the evidence. And what is not supported by the evidence does not warrant serious consideration. Come back when you have something to show, and then we have something to talk about. So if Aaron wants to suggest Christianity is dangerous, he needs to take his own advice and present data which actually looks at intrinsic religiosity and shows this. Now, to be fair, he did cite a couple papers, which I have read, one from Gregory Paul, for example, and I will address these towards the end. But when we look at the meta-analytical data, which account for studies that show differing results, not cherry-pick random studies that support your conclusion, the mathematical analyses demonstrate intrinsic religiosity is associated with beneficial outcomes in multiple areas.
Okay, again, pound it to the Christians. A good percentage of Michael's followers are highly conservative. I know this because I've talked with a lot of them. Some of them are very philosophical as well, and more liberal leaning. But just frame this in the term of religions that they don't like and put it in the mouth of Michael Jones. So think Islam when he says this.
Cherry-pick random studies that support your conclusion, the mathematical analyses demonstrate intrinsic religiosity is associated with beneficial outcomes in multiple areas.
Islam, mathematics show multiple benefits in multiple areas, something like that. Islam.
Okay, so remember, the burden is on Aaron to show that Christianity, as a form of intrinsic religiosity, is associated with negative effects. But the scientific data, when you calculate all the studies in, does not confirm this trend. Now I want to move on to look at intelligence and religion, because this was one of Aaron's claims, that religion removes the need for people to think rationally. In his recent debate with Tyler Vela, Aaron noted in his experience, the less religious you are, the more reasonable you are, and that Christianity encourages one to believe without evidence, citing examples like doubting Thomas. I'll get to my opponent's interpretations of various passages later on.
Yeah, I would not go there either. the state of California has doctors and lawyers and very intelligent people who are Scientologists. You can be extremely intelligent and in certain areas in your life be a total dunce. Is that too harsh? Same with Mormonism. You can have extremely competent PhDs in various respected fields believing that in gods and you're going to have your own planet and all this stuff.
But first, I want to address the claim that he's made over the years that Christianity encourages less rational thinking and lowers intelligence. Once again, this claim is unwarranted when you dive into the peer-reviewed literature. First, we need to realize measuring intelligence in subjects is extremely hard. This is because you and I might be more intelligent when it comes to philosophy or hermeneutics, but not as intelligent when it comes to auto mechanics or electrical engineering. Intelligence is not really aligned with stupid on one end and genius on the other. In reality, intelligence is more like a web, with different individuals excelling in different areas. This all means studying intelligence
Hey, Michael, you're saying basically what I just said.
can be quite difficult. Because of this, many researchers try to study and measure different types of intelligence. A couple types you'll see in the literature: creative intelligence, emotional intelligence, and analytical intelligence.
Yeah, see, my analytical intelligence is pretty high. My emotional intelligence is middle to low. My creative intelligence is probably the same, middle to low. So yeah, I agree with this.
When it comes to emotional intelligence, some studies have found positive associations with religion, specifically Christianity. And this is defined as the ability to understand one's emotions and those of others.
Yeah, and I bet you anything he's about to say, where he's going with this, again, I have not listened to this before, honest to goodness. If I was Michael, I would go to the correlation between autism. He did mention that earlier, but we'll see if he mentions it again. Autism and atheism.
Use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior in oneself and others, and adjust one's emotions to adapt to the environment and overcome trials. And
HCN stands for hydrogen cyanide. AQ is aqueous, so it's hydrogen cyanide in water.
increase self-mastery. Psychologist Daniel Goldman wrote a whole book called Emotional Intelligence, where he argues this type of intelligence is more helpful than IQ or analytical intelligence. And multiple studies show positive associations with Christianity. Of course, what about rationality or analytical intelligence? Well, we don't have to take Aaron's experience for it or the media. We can study the literature and see if there are any positive associations.
Yeah. So in general, I agree with Michael and disagree with Aaron Ra in the sense that you can be highly intelligent and still be religious. And even just because you're religious doesn't mean that it's going to be encouraged that you don't study and research and and try to raise your knowledge in certain things. What else was I going to say about that? But I do think that, and again, this has to do with cause and the difference between cause and correlation. I think the lower your IQ is genetically, the way you were born, I believe that people's IQ to a big degree is determined the same way as your ability to grow muscle. It's in your genetics. And I think that some people who are born with naturally lower IQs will be more needy on society. And if you're more needy on society, you're more likely to go into communities that can help you, i.e. religion. So you're more likely to be religious. Now, if there's Christian deacons listening to me right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The knock on the door of the church office as a deacon. Be honest with me, Christian deacons listening right now. What's your guess on the average IQ of those people? It's below 100, right? On average. And they're needy. And they come to your church and they start going to your church. They even become members of your church because they get the help they need.
With intrinsic religiosity and decreased intelligence or decreased rational skills. I'll start with a meta-analysis titled The Relation Between Intelligence and Religiosity by Miriam Zuckerman, which has shown up on numerous atheist forums. Because this meta-analysis from a couple of years ago did suggest there is a negative association between analytical intelligence and religiosity. However, we have to remember the golden rule in statistics. Correlation is not causation. In fact, this study that has been so often cited never suggests religion causes lower levels of intelligence.
Yeah, see, this right here, although I agree with it, I'm not disagreeing with Michael. But Michael, when you say this, correlation does not equal causation, it's almost like a duh moment. And I understand why you say it, because it kind of makes the Christians applaud. Yeah, go tell them. Just because, it's been shown that analytical type people with high analytical IQs tend to be less religious. For example, PhDs in physics and chemistry and so forth, they tend to go from specific theism to more like a deism to atheism. Michael's saying, well, it's a correlation, it's not causation. But it's a pretty strong indicator that guys like me, the more analytical types, the probability is that they're not going to be religious. Now, if Christianity is true, this is like a real bummer for me. Like, your God, Michael, has inflicted me with this analytical reasoning type brain that causes, on average, a higher probability of rejecting him that I was born with. My goodness, what is that fair?
Been so often cited, never suggests religion causes lower levels of intelligence. They directly say the present findings are correlational and cannot support.
A lot of Christian wives listening right now are thinking about their husbands like, oh, Doug's describing my husband, he just doesn't believe. And it's because he just picks everything apart and he thinks too much. Right? Am I right?
Support any causal relation. Furthermore, this study was heavily criticized by other researchers for significant problems. One study titled Losing Faith in the Intelligence Religiosity Link argued that the Zuckerman study suffered from publication bias. It didn't calculate the different sample sizes in individual studies, didn't distinguish between fixed and random sample sizes, relied too heavily on the fixed sample sizes, and didn't take into account the fact that the negative correlation decreased over time. So in other words, more recent studies displayed far less correlations between religion and lower levels of intelligence. The mathematical data in this later study recalculated Zuckerman's work.
Okay, I fast forward Aaron Ra at a certain point. I think it was around 15 to 20 minutes in, although there was an introduction. I'm going to do the same thing here for Michael. I'm going to be fair because I'm seeing a pattern. It's just more of the same now. Let's see, study. I get the point he's making, just like I got the point Aaron Ra was making. Actually, here I see something. Let me see what this is.
Rejection of evolution. So far, I've argued there's no strong empirical data Christianity causes dangerous or harmful results, and there are studies which show beneficial associations with intrinsic religiosity. There are no polls which support Aaron's conclusions that the majority of Christians have to accept his interpretations of Scripture, and there are no polls which show the majority of Christians have belief faith means you must reject evidence and rationality. Now, Aaron thinks...
Okay, again, for the Christians listening, I want you to just substitute the Quran. Quran verse says X. Quran interprets, the Muslim interprets X to mean Y. Put an X in there. Most Muslims also interpret X to mean Y. Put an X in there. Y causes dangerous effects. I really, really think Christians are not going to be comfortable with if Michael was, the things Michael's saying here, if it was applied to Islam. Because the core tenets of Islam teaches certain things, Michael. And those certain things that the core tenets of Islam preaches and teaches, Michael, have harmful effects on society, Michael. But you're saying, well, just because Muslims interpreted it the wrong way, that means you can't blame Islam? Is that what you're saying, Michael? This is what Aaron Ra should do in the Q&A period later.
Belief faith means you must reject evidence and rationality. Now, Aaron thinks this is what the Bible teaches, and he has a video, and in his video titled How Religion Harms Education, he says, faith is an assertion of unreasonable conviction that is assumed without reason and defended against all reason. Now, I don't know his source for this definition because he doesn't provide one in there, but there are numerous problems with this. First, faith in the Bible is the Greek word pistis, and I can find no scholar that specializes in Koine Greek who says this is what the Bible teaches. Dr. Leon Morris in the
See, this is very interesting to me. Why is my hand cut off? Sorry. This is very interesting to me because the topic is Christianity dangerous? And I know Aaron Ra always talks about faith in a certain definition, but why is Michael really going here? And I think I know why. Because the followers of Michael Jones and Inspiring Philosophy, a lot of conservative Christians, they are tired of feeling stupid for believing what they believe. And so when they hear and see that Aaron Ra is effective through his rhetoric in making Christians appear stupid, sound stupid, look stupid, and attributing that stupidity to a word called faith, guys like Michael, even though this directly has nothing to do with the topic, is Christianity dangerous, feels the need to address it because of the effectiveness of Aaron Ra's rhetoric. Am I wrong? Like, Christians, are you denying that are you saying that Aaron Ra is not effective in his rhetoric? He is. He is very effective at making young, immature Christians feel stupid. And so guys like Michael's paid money, probably more than he wishes he had more than he gets for all the time he puts in. He feels the need to address this word faith because of how it makes certain Christians feel. Like they don't want to be dismissed. I'm a Christian who believes faith and reason go hand in hand. But if Aaron Ra is right on his definition, then why would you ever listen to me? I'm just a crazy Christian. You're just going to dismiss me. But I want you to know Jesus. This is kind of the thought I think is going on.
Dictionary of Paul in his letters says faith is understood more or less as a response to revelation, not something one uses to get.
Oh, darken. If your right hand offendeth thee, cut it off. That is a great verse. Now, of course, a guy like Michael Jones is going to say that that's not literal. It's the wrong interpretation. And so Christians who have the wrong interpretation are going to, they might cut off their hand, but that's not what it really means. See, this is why it's a losing battle. You can't win this debate, is Christianity dangerous? Because that if there's any verse in Christianity, and this is a quote from Jesus, darken 5,000 pine points to you, because this is one of the perfect verse examples. If your right hand offendeth thee, cut it off. It's basically saying that if the right hand causes you to sin, you're better off losing it than spending eternity in hell. I'm not strawmanning Christianity here, guys. Christians, it says that. It says that. Now, where the difference comes in is intelligent Christians are going to say, but that's not what it means. It doesn't literally mean that. But there's going to be some people on this planet who might say, well, yeah, like if my right hand, if I'm a kleptomaniac, and if I live my life as a thief, which it says in the Bible, if you live your life as a thief, you shall not inherit the kingdom of heaven. And if you want to inherit the kingdom of heaven, maybe you are better off cutting off your hands if you're a kleptomaniac. Now, there's a specific example of where Christianity causes harm, at least on this planet. In the long run, it's a great benefit, right? Because you get to spend eternity in heaven. Too much? Go too far?
To Christianity, and he says faith means commitment or assurance, not blind belief. This can be seen in places like Acts 17:31. If you read the English, it doesn't say the word faith. You'll read, he has fixed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by a man whom he has appointed. And of this he has given assurance, pistis, to all by raising him from the dead.
All this is irrelevant, I think. Maybe he'll tie this together somehow, but it's irrelevant to the debate topic. Is Christianity dangerous? Like the word faith? My opinion, you can take it or leave it, is ask the person you're talking to what they mean by faith. They will give you an answer, and use that answer they give you. Don't argue with them. Don't debate them on their definition being wrong. Just accept their definition, because that's what I would want. especially with words like atheist and so forth. Well, that's not the true definition according to the philosophical textbooks. That's not the true definition according to the Greek. I'm a human being. Just humor me. Go with my definition for a second. And that's what I would do with the Christian. Just accept the definition. Now, I would say to guys like Michael that there's a much larger percentage that you would want to have that actually agree or empathize with Aaron Ra's definition of faith. But again, why are you even talking about this?
Or 1 Peter 1:6-7, the tested genuineness of your pistis, more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire. Faith does not mean rejecting evidence or reason. It means being committed to Christ, which is the same as what it means when someone says they're faithful to their spouse. It doesn't mean they blindly accept everything their spouse says or does. It means they're committed. How they rationally got to that commitment. The first and most obvious problem is this is confusing prescriptive verses with descriptive verses. Many of the verses from the Old Testament are not prescribed to Christians, and this can be demonstrated in 4 easy steps. In Matthew 5, Jesus says he came to fulfill the law.
Okay, so I skipped ahead because I think the faith talk is, even if it's relevant in Michael's mind, it's not interesting to me because I'm okay with whatever definition the Christian wants to use. But now Michael's trying to consolidate or help harmonize Christianity with the Old Testament. I haven't heard this before. I don't know what he's going to say. But my advice is don't talk about what verses mean or trying to go into the Hebrew and the Greek. You can do that. That's great. Go to things that really impact the Christian, like their worship, and ask them if questions, hypothetical questions. Michael, if it were true that Jesus said X, would it affect your worship? These are the questions you need to ask, in my opinion. That really, I don't think Michael believes this. Maybe he does, but if God purposely caused the death by drowning of people, and Jesus is God, does it bother you? Can you sit in church moments before the worship music starts with the thought that Jesus took the heads of toddlers and drowned them? Not literally, but in essence, drowned them. Drowned toddlers, babies. How does that affect your worship of Jesus? Do you lift your hands up the same way with that thought in your mind, and do tears come out of your eyes? These questions are powerful. And I think whatever Christians say, to try to consolidate and push it under the rug, I know that sounds bad, but whatever Christians say, these are the questions I encourage. I'm only one man. I can only do so much. When you're in your conversations with Christians, I think these are the powerful questions. And who cares if it's appeal to emotion? If they say that, say, yeah, I'm appealing to your emotion. I have emotions. Do you? And they'll say, yes. So I'm going to appeal to them. How does that affect? Worship is about emotion and intellect, but you can't exclude emotion. Get them to admit certain things that they feel uncomfortable with what their God did.
It will pass away once all is fulfilled. Step 2, John 19 says when Jesus bowed his head, he said, it is finished, to fulfill the scriptures. Hebrews 8 says because of this, the law is passing away.
See, like all this, what he's doing now, it's done. It's in the past. This is basically what Michael's saying. It's finito. We don't have to worry about this. Jesus came to fulfill the law. This is all past. But when you ask questions like, could you marry a woman who at one time cut up her children like 20 years ago in the bathtub? Could you marry that woman? She's changed now. She did her time. She paid her penalty. She's a new woman. But could you, how does that make you feel at one time in history, this woman did that? And could you marry that woman? Now apply that to Jesus. Could you marry Jesus? Could you have a personal relationship with a God that did that in the past? I realize that Jesus is a new man now. and he fulfilled the law, and it's all finished. That was all in the past. But could you really marry Jesus knowing he in the past did such things, commanded such things, willed such things? This is how you, in my opinion, should address Christians on these topics.
Obsolete. And in John 15 and Paul in Galatians 5 says what Christians are now commanded to do is to love one another and love thy neighbor. So Old Testament laws are not prescribed to Christians. So Christians, when I'm asked if I keep any of the Ten Commandments, I say no. Because all those were fulfilled in Christ, and instead I'm called to keep the royal law of Christ.
Some Christians are not going to like what he just said. But Michael knows this, and he's okay with it. I respect Michael for that.
There is overlap, for sure. Just like there is overlap between your old rent agreement and your new rent agreement.
By the way, what I just did and said, I was sincere. I respect Michael for what he just said, because he denounced the Old Testament, the Ten Commandments being applicable to Christianity. He's not saying that you should, curse God and murder. He's not saying that, but he's saying that this is not directly applicable to Christianity. I really mean, I respect him for saying that, because he knows that some Christians will not like that. He's basically saying, yeah, maybe we shouldn't have the Old Testament in government buildings and so forth. Well, maybe that's a bit of an aside, but if you're an atheist or a non-Christian listening, find areas of agreement and let them know you agree with them. Find areas that when they say something that you respect, let them know it. Because don't you want them to say that about you? Like, aren't you tired of constantly being pushed back? Everything I say, why is the Christian always pushing back on Pine Creek? Everything Michael from Inspiring Philosophy says, why are there atheists? All they do is pushing back. If you have areas of genuine, sincere agreement, let them know. Purposely go out of your way to contact them and let them know, I appreciate what you said there.
Agreement, but you don't follow the rules of your old rent agreement in your new apartment. Likewise, some laws are restated in the new covenant, like love thy neighbor, but that doesn't mean it's exactly the same covenant as the old. Now, I wanted to address some of these studies, so I left myself some time at the end. So he cites a cross-cultural analysis of saying that more secular countries have better results. This is a paper by a paleontologist named Gregory Paul, and I've seen Phil Zuckerman cite this as well. Okay, I want to be clear. I'm using an analogy here. I'm not accusing RN of anything in this analogy except comparing types of reasoning. Unfortunately, this is the same data I see when I've debated white supremacists. They'll go, look at how much better Europe is, and look at how bad Africa is. Therefore, whiteness causes it. That's a bad argument. We have to do multivariate analysis of people in these countries. That's important. You just can't do what Paul did, do a univariate analysis of cross-country data. That's not a good argument. For example, other studies, when you look at this.
What just happened? Is he saying because it sounds racist, it's wrong? Is that what he just said? What? What just happened there?
I see when I've debated. Clear, I'm using an analogy here. I'm not accusing RN of anything in this analogy except comparing types of reasoning. Unfortunately, this is the same data I see when I've debated white supremacists. They'll go, look at how much better Europe is, and look at how bad Africa is. Therefore, whiteness causes it. That's a bad argument. We don't.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Just because someone is white doesn't mean that the outcomes are better.
We have to do multivariate analysis of people in these countries. That's important. You just can't do what Paul did, do a univariate analysis of cross-country data. That's not a good argument.
Okay, so what he's saying, just like we can't say Denmark or Sweden has better outcomes in, say, healthcare or education, that you can't say that's because they're white. You can't say it's because they're atheist, mostly atheist. I think that's where he's going with this. For example, other studies, when you look at this,
Where is it? So, for example, crime and religion, an international comparison among 13 industrial nations, found at the individual level of analysis, evidence has accumulated in support of the hypothesis that persons who are most religious commit crimes at lower rates than those who are least religious. And this will correlate to the meta-analysis I cited earlier that says religion deters crime. So Phil Zuckerman does a lot of this in his paper from 2009 where he cites these cross-cultural analysis. The problem is that's not good reasoning. We got to look at intrinsic religiosity studied in actual subjects. And by and large, it shows very good results. Now, real quick, I want to know the differences because I want to preempt a possible argument. What's the difference between intrinsic religiosity and extrinsic religiosity? This shows up in the literature a lot. Psychologists going back to the 60s wanted to distinguish different types of religiosity. Intrinsic religiosity is defined persons with orientation find their master motive in religion. Other needs, strong as they may be, are regarded as less of an ultimate significance, and they are, so far as possible, brought into harmony with the religious beliefs and prescriptions. In other words, intrinsic religiosity means you hold to the core tenets of the religion. That's why you're religious. You want to believe in the core tenets of Christianity. That's your motivation. Extrinsic religiosity is defined as using religion as a means to an end. You use religion to make yourself more moral, or to be part of a fun social group, or just to fit in with your culture. You use religion as a means to an end. That is always associated with negative effects. Whereas intrinsic religiosity, what is studied in the literature, is by and large associated with very positive effects. So we need to keep that in mind going forward. Other terms that show up in the literature are like things like quest orientation, religious fundamentalism, distinct from intrinsic religiosity, and sometimes we'll even include Christian orthodoxy, which can overlap different parts in there. So we need to keep that in mind. Furthermore, one of the studies I cited earlier, the religious orientation scale, notes that extrinsic religiosity scale does a good job, extrinsic religiosity does a good job of measuring the sort of religion that gives religion a bad name. So a lot of the effects we see in society that some people like to attribute to religion, in the meta-analysis peer-reviewed data, that's most likely attributed to extrinsic religiosity, not actually intrinsic religiosity. And Christianity, by definition, would have to be a form of intrinsic religiosity.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to comment on this. Someone in the chat, Raphael, is saying 99% of the inmates in prison are Christians. I don't know if it's 99%. Maybe 99% are religious, not necessarily Christian, like Christian, Mormon, well, yeah, Muslim and so forth. I think it depends on where you are, but my guess, I could be wrong about this, but the average demographic in the United States, I think atheists are wealthier than the average Christian. And there's a high correlation between crime and income, meaning the more likely you have a good income, the less likely you are to be involved in crime. I think that's true. And if that's true, then, and I think it's really tough to know because of self-reporting, but the per capita percentage of atheists in prisons is lower than it is for Christians. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm going to skip ahead to the back and forth. How long have I been going? Well, let's go longer.
Now, segue to cross-examination. Each speaker will have 15 minutes to question.
Yes, Epic Christ, inmates become Christians. I think it's for their survival, right?
The other, I will give notice at the 5-minute and 2-minute mark. After that, short.
Somebody had this belief that having the belief wouldn't necessarily harm them.
Okay, I made so many comments earlier of what Aaron Ron should do. I even forgot what they are now. But let's see if he says any of them, and it brings it back to my memory.
Which I have huge issues with. But we note that Christianity, obviously, by my presentation, doesn't show that it prevents Christians from behaving badly. Clearly that has failed, right? And there's nothing about the value of truth in the belief, right? There doesn't have to be any validity at all, which is a huge issue for me. I will have to wonder, how is it not dangerous to believe in the concept of a scapegoat or original sin or a global flood that we know never happened, any of that? How is that not dangerous?
Well, you'd have to show.
Okay, so he's shifting the burden, which is okay, I think, in this case. Maybe it's not okay. He's saying, how is it not dangerous to believe in scapegoating? I don't know what Michael's going to say, but I would say, well, what if R and Raw, what if scapegoating, the concept of scapegoating, led more people to not commit suicide? Would you be for scapegoating if it had better health outcomes, i.e., they lived instead of off themselves? Like at that point, if Michael says that, like at that point, what's Aaron Ra going to say? Because I'm quite sure Aaron Ra's definition of good and bad, it has to do with well-being, unnecessary suffering, and so forth. Now, Aaron Ra would say, well, but that's not happening. But let's see.
Studies showing those specific beliefs actually cause these dangerous effects. I just can't go, oh, well, your interpretation is enough to show that. I don't know what else to do. I want to go off of what the science says.
Okay, does the science say, Michael, that that Muslims are more likely to chop off people's heads because of their interpretation of Islam? That's what Aaron Ra should ask at this point.
Okay, well, and of course I do too. I mean, Daniel Dennett. Thank you. And Daniel Dennett is running the. I think maybe it's his wife, Linda Lascola, that's running the Clergy Project. Are you familiar with it?
Vaguely, you should probably
Okay,
remind
so
me.
this is where pastors who have spent their lives making a living as pastors realize that they don't believe their own nonsense anymore. And one of the trends that was recognized from that was that they tend to be less, when they realize that they no longer believe, they come out of belief. The trend is that they no longer are as judgmental. They are much more tolerant. They're much more liberal. They change the way that they vote. They no longer hate gays, for example. You know, so.
See, Aaron Ra, I agree with what you're saying, but I know where Michael's going to go with this, and it's going to fall. It's like it's going to have no impact because I think personally in my own life, as a Christian, I used to see people as them. Look at them, the non-Christian. I'm a Christian. My wife's a Christian. Us, but look at them. Us versus them is the tribal thing, which can be dangerous. And so when you bring up the Clergy Project and anecdotal stories of pastors who feel they become more welcoming to gays, homosexuals, transgenders, whatever, so what? It's not going to impact Michael or even his followers in this debate. They're going to say, well, come on, we got science on our side. Like, we got peer-reviewed papers that show, what do you have? Where's your peer-reviewed paper? Maybe Aaron Ra has one on this.
How does I'm trying to formulate this question on the fly. How does believing things that are not evidently true, which is the basis of faith, not dangerous?
Great question. And Michael, you should hit this one out of the park because it's easy. Sometimes believing false things can save your life. Now, what's a specific example? Oh, yeah, taking a life-saving medicine and someone telling you that it's not that because you refuse to take it, and they lie to you, and so you're believing a false thing, but it's going to save your life. So, Aaron, if you haven't thought of that yet, man, you need to rethink yourself. There's this, and I appreciate Aaron, and I resonate with your idea that we should believe as many true things as possible, but to say that believing false things cannot be beneficial, especially depending on how you define beneficial, like you're missing it. We believe lies all the time, and some of those lies actually help save our lives.
Again, I can't psychoanalyze all those pastors. I would need to have a study done. Are they extrinsically religious? Are they Christian fundamentalists? I'm sorry, religious fundamentalists is the term used in the studies. Are they intrinsic? Just saying, look, this is the way it perceives to me, or this is the way it perceives to Dennett's wife, is not enough to actually show that's what's happening. Correlation is not causation. I need to see actual data that intrinsic religiosity increases bad ethical behavior, or lowers intelligence, or increases these bad beliefs, you think.
Well, we did give.
And again, if you're a Christian listening, what Michael just said, put that in terms of Islam, and I tell you, your whole perspective on this is going to change. You're going to say, well, wait a minute, you're saying that you need to see data that being a Muslim causes bad effects? You need to see data? Like, Michael, come on, that's common sense. Look what they believe, Michael. Michael, look what Islam believes. You're saying, look what Mormons believe. Look what Scientology. Michael, all you have to do is just look. You're saying you need a paper to tell you this? This is how I would talk.
A whole bunch of examples of this, right? And this is specific to Christianity. Of course, this is all religions that have the same problem. And they all claim to have the absolute truth when none of them have any actual truth
Thanks, Derek. Yes, I'll take the kids for ice cream.
to them at all. And one of the biggest issues that I have with religious people is that they always, for some reason that I've still never figured out, they always think that belief in the existence of God somehow dictates morality, even though the Scripture doesn't support that at all. I mean, the way that we are judged is not over whether we are good or bad, because if we are evil, then according to the Bible, then
Oh, I remember some of the things I was saying that Aaron Ross should say to Michael, and he needs to bring up what I have on my screen is water dangerous. Like, that would have been my first question to Michael. Michael, is water dangerous? And Michael's a smart guy. He'd say, well, in some situations, yes, some situations, no. Okay, so we got to figure out what's the majority of the time these situations attributed to Christianity. And here's another question Aaron Ross should have asked. Michael, what's Christianity anyhow? Like, I can't say it's dangerous if I don't know what it is. You notice the definition of Christianity hasn't come up yet, and we're an hour in.
and then we are going to be punished in this life, not in the next one. What we are judged for exclusively is whether we believe. It doesn't matter how evil you are. All your sins can be forgiven if you but believe. But if you don't believe, then it doesn't matter how good you are, because the only sin that cannot be forgiven is the sin of disbelief. You are judged for your gullibility exclusively, and you are not given evidence. You're given, as I said before, you're given authority claims, right? You're given that you have to believe the Bible or else, but you are not given evidence to indicate that, and you are forbidden to consider evidence to the contrary.
Is there a question in there?
I thought that was.
Well, you didn't end with a question.
How is it not dangerous, given that you have...
Yeah. Points to Michael here. Is there a question there? That's exactly what Michael should have said, because basically, Aaron, you're preaching here. So instead of saying, how is it not dangerous? Aaron, I think you should have said, in fact, Darkin in the live stream chat brought up a great verse. You should have read that verse out to Michael and say, okay, a person reads, I don't want to look it up, but it's better for you to cut off your hand than spend eternity in hell. I'm paraphrasing. But read that verse to Michael and ask him, do you think that verse is dangerous? This is the words of Jesus, Michael. Do you think that verse is dangerous? Michael would then say, well, if interpreted incorrectly, yes. Then, Aaron, you could ask questions like, okay, at what point do we say a religion is dangerous based on the number of incorrect interpretations? Like, if it's 20%, if most adherents incorrectly translate the holy text 20% of the time, can we say the whole religion is dangerous? 30%, 50%, 51%? How much incorrect translations, interpretations, does there have to be in order for that religion to be dangerous, the text to be dangerous? Here's a good question, Arnold, you could have asked Michael. What would Jesus have had to have said? Can you think of anything that Jesus could have said that would make Christianity dangerous? Ooh, I like that question. I love that question, because Michael would then have to think on the spot and say something like, well, if Jesus was said, kill your babies, eat your mothers, something like that. And then Michael would have to come up with some really extreme example. And then I think Aaron Ra could pull out of his hat something similar to that. Like if he says, if Jesus said, kill every firstborn child, Aaron Ra could bring out Ezekiel 20, where it talks about killing of the firstborn child, and then where God commands bad things for his people. And then, of course, then the audience would just sit back and watch Michael. Blah, 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 blah. This is not what it means. Blah, 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 context, blah, 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 blah. That's a new covenant, blah, 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 blah. And just, yeah, rhetorically that'd have been brilliant. Okay, but anyhow, let's see what Howard does here.
Have to believe this no matter what.
Okay, well, you cited a couple things in there. A, your interpretation. A, in your experience, this is what you see. I would just reply, is your experience somehow evidence? I need to see actual data that what you think this interpretation, as I noted in my presentation, is interpreted that way. So you take this Bible verse and you say, well, it means this. And then all Christians also accept this and it says dangerous effects. All those are leaps in logic. You got to show me your interpretation is the only necessary reading. And then you got to show that most Christians agree with you on this, and that has dangerous effects when studied.
Yes, yes. So Christians, please, I beg you. This is probably the 10th time I said this. But when you hear Michael talk like this, think about Islam. Well, yes, Islam is, well, no. Muslims are dangerous because they read the Quran. The Quran says some bad things. But Michael just clearly showed you, well, you got to show that this is the only interpretation that Muslims can have for the Quran. I tell you, your whole perspective of what Michael's saying right now is going to change, at least for a good percentage of you, because it's not going to sit well with you because you think, man, these other religions are dangerous. This is what Aaron Ross should be doing. Don't focus on Christianity, because whenever all the studies, not all, most of the studies that Michael brought up wasn't on Christianity. It was on religion. So what Aaron Ross should do now is take religions that Michael and his followers and Christians think are harmful and hit them with it hard. Avoid Christianity like the plague. Just don't talk about Christianity. Talk about religions that most Christians just, no, that's a terrible religion. And then just say, well, it's not the religion that's terrible. It's just the mistranslations, the misinterpretations of that religion. And I tell you, the Christian's going to go, no!
Dan Barker, for example, who was a missionary for many years, traveling internationally, bringing the word of God and so forth. He was the one that wrote that faith is a cop-out. That if you have to believe something on faith, it means that it's not based on evidence, right? So we've gotten quotes like this from many people who used to believe once they realized how.
Simon Funk, you said, I'm surprised Inquisition not being dangerous. I wouldn't even go there. You don't go there. Go with something other than Christianity. Because they're just going to say, well, these are Christians not representing true Christianity. That's easy, and you're done. Like from the Christian perspective, you bring up Inquisition. Oh, no, that's just Christians doing bad things. It has nothing to do with core Christianity. So you don't bring up inquisitions of the Christians. You bring up things that a lot of Christians just disagree with in other religions and then say, no, that's not Islam. That's just Muslims behaving poorly. Then you start affecting them, the Christians listening.
How vacuous that actually is. And every Christian I've ever debated this with tells me that I'm misdefining faith. And that's why I would say, okay, well, what is the evidence, the scientific evidence that prompted you to believe as you do? Never once has any of them ever produced a thing. So where is the positive attribute? Since there's no evident truth to the belief system, this goes back to the first question I asked you in this interrogation.
But again, we've an hour in, and then we still don't know what true Christianity is.
Where is the value of truth in the belief system?
Okay, well, it sounds like it's question making. You're assuming, your standard of evidence. You're assuming that somehow your worldview is already true. That's not the debate tonight. The debate is Christianity dangerous? So even if Christianity is wrong, that doesn't necessarily mean it manifests in dangerous ways.
It's not wrong to believe.
That is a great point. Again, if you're an atheist or non-Christian listening and you hear Michael say that, I think he's spot on. Christianity could be 100% false, and that does not mean it's dangerous. Kudos to Michael. That's a great point. Something can be entirely false and even not only not dangerous, but actually beneficial to you. And the example I gave earlier is lying to someone so they take a life-saving drug.
Believe in something that is not evidently true.
I didn't say that. So
are you saying that? Tell me, yes or no.
Say the question again.
Is it wrong to believe in something that is not evidently true?
Define evidently, because that sounds like an evidential.
Supported by evidence. See, I can't believe something unless it is supported by evidence.
Right, I would agree.
I wouldn't believe something unless I'm convinced by it. Right, and then there has to be evidence to convince me. I can't take because I said so or because you'll go to hell if you don't believe this.
I would agree.
Okay, so with Christianity, you are required to believe in a handful of things, just a small number of things that are not supported by any evidence at all, and that's the thing that you're being judged for. So how is that not dangerous, especially when it comes to your evaluation or your analysis of data? If you're not allowed allowed to consider data. You're only allowed to believe what you're told on faith.
A couple things there. It doesn't say we're not allowed to consider data. I don't see a verse indicating that. And again, I would send this as sort of question making. You're assuming it's already false, therefore it's bad, therefore it's dangerous. That's not the debate we're having tonight, if it's true or not. We're having a debate, is it dangerous? So for example, Ptolemaic astronomy, we both reject. It's a bad argument, but it was useful for navigation. So something can be pragmatic and not true. Something can be true and not pragmatic. That's what the debate I was understanding we were having tonight. That's why I focused on the actual studies. I didn't present arguments for Christianity. If you want to have that debate, I'm sure James would like to host it in the back.
Yeah, I'm not interested in a debate promoting Christianity either, but heresy, apostasy, and blasphemy, right? These are all variations from what you've been told to believe. If you deviate from that, or if you don't buy it at all, these are all damnable, right? These are capital crimes for which in many countries and throughout most of history you could be murdered if you subscribe to any one of them. If you had a different opinion or a different interpretation, that's heresy, right? If you didn't believe it at all,
I agreed with Michael there that the topic was, is Christianity dangerous? But again, Michael, to be fair, most of the studies you brought up didn't use the word Christianity; they used the word religion or religiosity. And even if the religions studied in those studies were mostly Christian religions, that the point still remains. Are you going to say now, Michael? Are you going to say now that Christianity is different than Islam in terms of the results of these studies that you presented to Aaron Ra? So again, Aaron Ra should have pounded this hard, and not for pure rhetorical reasons, for the Christians listening. Make Michael say Islam is not dangerous. Get those words out of Michael Jones's mouth. And the way he debated tonight, he is almost forced to say that because of all the studies he's produced. There is no scientific peer-reviewed evidence that says that Islam is dangerous, according to Michael Jones, right? Michael, are you going to disagree with me on this? This is what Aaron Ra should have pounded hard. What's the most dangerous religion historically, like going way back? I don't know. He could bring up specific examples of bad things in other religions other than Christianity and get Michael to say, well, according to the peer-reviewed scientific results, it's not the religion that caused this. It's just the people misbehaving. And Aaron Ra would have scored so many rhetorical points there if he would have said that. Maybe he still does. I haven't watched all of this. And I don't know if I have time to do all that. This is going way too long. But I'm having fun. I don't know if you guys noticed, but this is fun.
If you no longer believed it, that was apostasy. And if you decided, you know what, I don't buy this anymore, that's blasphemy. You can be killed for any of those. How is that not dangerous?
I never said it wasn't, but I want to see that intrinsic religiosity is directly causing it.
If you want to argue that Christianity is not dangerous, then how is it not dangerous? You have a required belief system, and I can go through a list of other things, but you said that none of my examples of what Christianity leading to, the teachings of Christianity, the scriptures implying what believers have to do if they believe in the scriptures, you discounted all those because that's just bad people doing bad things. But if you have the belief system, what about that is not dangerous?
Okay, well, I didn't just discount it. I gave studies showing that the correlations just aren't there and the causation is not just there.
No, you said that all of the people that I had listed, all of the atrocities that have gone down in the name of Christ by Christian leaders and by main denominations and so forth, were all just Christians acting badly. Obviously, Christianity doesn't prevent people from acting badly, and it does.
Great point, which I think, Michael, Aaron Ra, if I was you, I would have stopped at that point and asked, do you agree? Do you agree that Christianity does not stop people from behaving badly? Like, Christians believe that they have the Holy Spirit, the helper, the comforter, to help them, to guide them to all truth. But it seems like that doesn't stop all Christians from behaving badly and sinning.
Indeed, as you admitted yourself in your own presentation, it does prompt a lot of people to reject science, to reject rationalism, to not be able to consider their own perspectives or the evidence. They can't discuss any of this rationally because they're upholding that they have to believe something. And if you have to believe something, and you're going to be damned forever, and the Bible's explicit about this, you have to believe exactly what it tells you for no reason, or you're going to be damned.
Where does it say for no reason?
When it says that it has to be believed on faith.
And
so we have.
Okay, I have a Christian in the live stream chat. I'm going to call you out, Epic Christ. I asked you a question in the live stream chat. Is Islam dangerous? And your reply was, I would need to see some studies on it. Before you even comment, you need to read his studies. You're talking to me about all the studies Michael said. So here is an example of a Christian in my live stream chat, unwilling to say that Islam is dangerous. How many Christians watching this in the replay, watching this in the future, agree with Epic Christ here? Are you going to hold back your judgment on Islam? A lot of you will, but I know there's a lot of Christians saying, oh, that Epic Christ guy, he has no backbone. Of course Islam is dangerous. Come on, Epic Christ. You know what they believe. Have you ever heard of Sharia law and the infidels and all that? What they do to apostates? Come on, Epic Christ. You know that Islam's dangerous. A lot of Christians think this way, and this is exactly how Aaron Ra should have approached this back and forth, is make Michael Jones say that Islam is not dangerous because he's saying that there's no evidence that Christianity is dangerous using religious studies. Again, these are all just rhetorical points.
We have the story of Thomas. Well, Thomas looked for evidence, and he was given evidence. So we're all supposed to accept that, oh, well, Thomas looked for evidence, and there was evidence. So if it was enough to satisfy Thomas, then it was enough to satisfy me. But it's not.
Where does the Bible say that we're just supposed to believe Thomas's word?
Nowhere does it say, and nor did I imply, that we were supposed to believe Thomas's word, as Thomas is not likely a real character.
She says there was a question there?
You skipped the question to ask another one of your own.
So what's the question?
Okay. How is it not dangerous to be required to believe something even when the evidence says otherwise?
I would say that's question begging. You're assuming the evidence doesn't lead to Christianity. That's what my whole channel is for, is showing the evidence. Now, even if that is false, that doesn't show that it is dangerous. The numerous studies done don't show those results.
Yeah, this is a bad question, Aaron Ra, because you've asked the same question twice and just giving Michael the chance to repeat himself. Something could be completely false. Something could be completely untrue and still not dangerous. In fact, it could be good. A lie could be good. Lying to the Nazis. Do you have Jews underneath your floor panels? No. And they actually believe the person and they walk away. Falsehood could be good. Lying can save lives. Now, it's hard for some Christians to admit this, but for secularists, us evil guys like you and me, Aaron, we realize this, that truth and danger and benefits are two different things. Now, I do agree with Aaron's main point that when we get in a habit of believing false things, man, that's not a good habit to get into.
So I don't know where you're getting this data
Again,
from.
we're not getting to the truth of the value of the belief. Okay, you're saying that you have the placebo effect, that if and we're just assuming that your studies are true, because the thing that I found interesting about you is that the studies I cite show exactly the opposite of the studies that you cite, and the other studies that I didn't cite also show the opposite of what you cite.
I've read a lot of the studies.
Well, so what?
I've read a lot of the studies you cite. Like you cited the one on child abuse. That was a self-reported measure of 111 inmates. And I think.
By the way, I'm getting tired here. Anybody who saw this debate, if there was any interesting questions in the Q&A, I know there's a Q&A coming up. I haven't watched it. Put it in the live stream chat. Even timestamp it if you can for me. And maybe I'll play that. But I'm starting to get the sense that nothing's being accomplished here in the back and forth. In fact, I'll play it a little bit longer, but I'm starting to lose interest.
Calculate any sort of data. It didn't have them perform any tests. It didn't.
It was a study of 111 inmates that didn't require any data.
No, it was a survey basically. I looked at it.
Okay.
I saw you cited it in some of the video from
So
March
how is
11th.
that not data? I'm sorry, that's not even in the line of
Self-reporting
questioning.
measure.
Okay, so where is the value then, right? Because if you're going to be damned on what you believe, and so we're controlling what people think, and the Ten Commandments, I'm sure you will agree, is all about controlling what people think, because you are going to be damned over whether you believe something. I mean, it doesn't matter what you believe if you're talking to people, but God's going to damn you over what you believe, not whether you're a good person or a bad person. So that has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with our morality. And most people object to the biblical morality anyway. They would not live out what the Bible says that they're supposed to do. So how is Christianity not dangerous? If you're following it to the letter, then you're a fundamentalist, and the fundamentalists are the most dangerous form of Christians, right?
That's not how religious fundamentalism is defined in these studies. It's actually different than intrinsic religiosity. It's defined more as like a radical view.
Yeah. I would have forced Michael to answer that question, that fundamentalism is the most dangerous form of Christianity. Aaron, you were on the right track there. Get Michael Jones to say in your this again, Michael Jones Michael Jones would hate to answer this question live, I think. Michael Jones, can you list for me the most dangerous forms of Christianity? Be specific. Baptists, Amish. You know, I'm not saying that they're all terrible, but if you had to rank the various versions of Christianity, where would you put them? Would fundamentalism, like the God hates fags people, like, would you admit that they are harmful, dangerous? You had to press them on that. Another thing I would have pressed Michael on was someone prays, their daughter is sick, and they pray for their daughter because they believe in the power of prayer, and they don't take that daughter to the hospital. The daughter dies, using belief in miracles before science and medicine. Michael, can you, for the record, state that this form of Christianity is dangerous? If Michael can't do that, then it's like, wow. I think Michael would say, of course that's dangerous, but that has nothing to do with Christianity. And at that point, when he says this has nothing to do with true Christianity, you ask him, what is true Christianity? Because this debate has been going on and on and on, and we don't even know what Christianity is yet within the context of this debate. Someone says I should skip to the Q&A, but I don't think I will. I think I've said enough. And let me check the live stream chat if there's actually a really good Q&A question. Okay, here we go. Epic Christ, you say skip to 154:44. Since I called you out, Epic Christ, I'm going to do what you say here. 154:44. 154. Oh, Eric Hernandez. I know Eric. Okay. Wow, I know of him. I actually invited him to come on my channel a long time ago, and he said no.
Questions for Aaron. You mentioned that in 20 years of...
Actually, he didn't say no. He just didn't reply. He gave me the push off, or the, what do you call it? This is like 2 years ago.
rigorous research, you found no evidence, I think you said, of Christianity. But
No, that's not what I said. I said in 20 years of arguing with Christians that they told me that I'm wrong about the belief in faith, that faith is not a belief that is not based on evidence. Right? I say that faith is a belief that is not based on evidence. They all say, oh, yeah, we have evidence. I say, okay, fine. What is it? And I've always specified that I'm looking for scientific evidence. They ask, what evidence would I accept? I said, how much evidence would you accept? They would ask. I said, I'll take anything that qualifies as evidence. Any body of objectively verifiable
By the way, this question has nothing to do with the topic at hand. Is Christianity dangerous?
facts which positively indicate or exclusively concord with that particular position over any other. In 20 years,
I think I get-
without exception,
Okay.
there has been no one to present any scientific evidence that actually indicates the Christian God, or indeed any God, or in fact anything supernatural at all.
If I was Aaron Ra, I would, whenever he says the word evidence, I'd stick the adjective empirical in front of it. Because a lot of Christians, if not most, would agree with that. There's no empirical evidence because they would say God's outside of the science. And so they would agree with that.
I appreciate the clarification. So, you mentioned that in 20 years of rigorous research, you found no evidence of what you're looking for. But then when Michael pressed you on naming just one scholar who defines the word faith in the way you put it, you couldn't name one. So my question is, could it be possible that your research is maybe flawed, biased, and even maybe dangerous to the pursuit of truth?
I have conducted this experiment, as I explained, over and over and over and over again, having this exact conversation at least once a week for 20 years. Not one...
Yeah. The question was basically name a scholar that defines faith the way you do, and you think you're a scientific guy. And Aaron Ra's response is, well, in my anecdotal experience of 20 years, not one person has defined it the way you think they should, or something like that. I think this is where this is going. Again, I don't even know why the word faith was even brought up. Well, no, I do know why. The reason why this was even brought up is because there is a good percentage of Christians, this is my opinion, a good percentage of Christians feel stupid. They feel dumb. And guys like Aaron Ra make them feel dumb with the way, because of his rhetorical speech. And guys like Eric Hernandez and Inspiring Philosophy and other apologists, they get paid money to help young Christians, especially, even older ones, not feel so silly and dumb and stupid for believing the things they do. Because let's be real. If someone says that their friend rose from the dead last week, they're not going to believe it. They're not going to believe it. They don't believe these things in everyday life. But stick it back in a book 2,000 years ago, somehow they start to believe these things. This starts to bother them after a while when they start to think about it. This is like the Sam Harris type line, what I just said. And so when they hear guys like Aaron Ra just says, look, there's something else other than evidence that's causing you to believe. And this is something that I'm calling faith. And in my experience, when I'm talking to Christians, they will admit this to me, that there's this, it's almost like I call it the X factor. Christians call it the Holy Spirit. It's the Holy Spirit that actually is what's causing them to believe. And so I think Eric Hernandez is right in the sense that I don't know, what's a scholar? Like maybe there's a guy with a PhD behind his name who studies philosophy or religion who has defined faith in a way similar to Aaron Ra, and maybe we could find that. Does that make a difference, Eric Hernandez, to you? Of course not. You're still going to say that's the wrong definition. So all this is just nonsense. By the way, let me end the same way I began. Debate was flawed from the beginning because of its title, because of its... Is Christianity dangerous? Is the stupidest thing you could debate. It's exactly like saying, is water dangerous? Is hydrogen cyanide dangerous? Is Islam dangerous? I love the Islam one. And so the answer is, it depends. Right? Someone wants me to go to 140:45. I'm getting tired, guys. Okay, I'll do one more for Mr. Pig. 140:45. Let me back it up. Here we go. Last one.
Glad we agreed on something there.
Hey there, guys. My name is Edward Newton, and I apparently feedback. Michael, I'm an atheist, but I'm a huge fan of your channel. I love the way you cite facts. I have two questions. I'm going to be very quick because I want to respect everybody's time. The first one is for Michael. The second one's for Michael, but also Aaron, I'd like to get your thoughts on it as well. The first one is you cited, I think it was 600 or 800 in the meta study.
I cited there was one meta-analysis from 2001 called "Religion and Mental Health: Evidence for an Association."
And so that was the correlation between intrinsic religiosity and like pro-social behavior, right?
It's a correlation between, to quote it directly, religious involvement is generally associated with greater well-being, less depression and anxiety.
Okay, so because you're citing a study that does not focus on Christianity, but instead covers every kind of definition of intrinsic religiosity, doesn't it stand to reason that those studies that you're citing are actually just proving that whatever is causing the good behavior is not specific to Christianity? That it is not part of the Christian philosophy?
Well, that's
This is the question I've asked that several times during this live stream. I hope this guy, I paused it before I even hear the answer. I hope this guy asks a follow-up question: is Islam dangerous?
Good question. So one of the things to remember is a lot of these studies are done in the United States, Europe, Canada, with high Christian volumes. From what I have seen looking into that, because I had the same question as you, most of the people they're studying are Christians, or sometimes Jews, and sometimes they include Islam in there. But most of the people they're studying are Christians and their intrinsic religiosity. So if you go look at the individual studies they're bringing up, those are the majority of the people they're looking at because they're the most available, right where the studies are being done.
But it's not actually, there's nothing in the study saying Christianity. We're just assuming, because the population is mostly Christian, that it must therefore be Christianity, right?
I kind of am a little confused
Do
about what
you
you
know
mean.
what I mean? Like, there's nothing in that study that's targeting the philosophy of Christianity.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean, says Michael. What the guy here, the questioner should say is, okay, could a Muslim imam get up and use the same studies you use, Michael, to say that Islam is not dangerous? That there's no proof, no evidence, no scientific peer-reviewed results to say that Islam's dangerous. True, yes or no, Michael? Could a Muslim do what you did tonight? That's what he should ask.
Specifically, like for example, it could tie back into something like Rat Park, where what's really correlated to well-being is things like community and fellowship.
Right, that's a good question. And the answer is no, because that would be extrinsic religiosity. When people use these things for community, for well-being, getting together, that's different in the studies, and that's why they distinguish it. What they look for with intrinsic religiosity is they get people to go, I believe in God, I hold to the core tenets of Christianity or Judaism, and what are the benefits?
What about Islam?
Of that variant there. So if it was all about just being part of a community, we would see the correlations in extrinsic religiosity.
Well, I didn't mean to say that it's just being part of the community, but just that intrinsic religiosity would then entail community and everything like that. So
it entails, but they look at that. For example, I cited the one study, the religious orientation scale. They know those are other factors, and those other factors are not where the positive associations are coming from.
that's right. So
Please ask him, is Islam dangerous? Yes or no? and you'll know just like that, this whole debate was a stupid debate.
then my second question for you, but also for you, sir, is it's more of a, are we sure Christianity isn't dangerous? And specifically for this reason, because Christianity, the philosophy of it, posits itself as the highest moral good, right? And in that way can insinuate itself between a person and the law, or even a person and their own feelings in the case of...
This guy's good. Thank you. What was your name? Mr. Pig? Math Pig? Yeah, this who's this guy? You're 10,000 pine points to whoever this guy in the green cap is.
People who decided not to report priests who were abusing their children because Christianity was the higher good than their own children. Isn't it true that in situations that there is a danger present when Christianity is there's a choice between will we protect Christianity or will we protect people?
I would kind of go...
Yes, see, and this is similar to my question of, should you pray? What about those people who pray to God to heal their daughter instead of taking them to the hospital? We're putting science, man and science ahead of, not to say it's bad and wrong and sinful, but we're putting it ahead of the power of the Holy Spirit, the demonstrable healing potential and power of Yahweh. Yeah.
Going what Aaron was just saying with the last question is that people, when they want to do bad stuff, like hide things, they'll look for whatever excuses they can.
But the people who, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to be really clear with what I'm asking. The real danger I'm talking about is not the priests. Bad people are bad people. The danger I'm talking about is the thousands of parents who willingly chose not to report the rapist of their children because of their faith. That's the danger I'm talking about.
Yeah, the number of parents who've chosen not to bring their children to the hospital because of their true belief that Jesus, through the Holy Spirit, would heal their child. Great question.
I would push back and say I don't think it's their faith that's causing it. I think it's some sort of emotional desire to sort of protect their in-group, to protect those type of people. And
So the people who refuse to take their children to the hospital because they believe God will heal them, it's not their faith that's causing this. It's their own emotional desires to be in their in-group where the charismatic in-group of the Holy Spirit will heal, the Pentecostal type in-group. See, this is the danger. So if I was this guy, and he might do this, if I was this guy asking Michael questions, I would say, do you say this form of Christianity is dangerous? The type of Christianity where people will not report rape, or not bring their children to the hospital and they die.
And I would need to see some sort of study showing that maybe that intrinsic value they have to sort of protect Christianity is causing it. I mean, people do all sorts of bad things for bad reasons. We cannot make those sort of jumps with unless there's no science behind it. If someone is trying to protect their priest, well, we need to ask...
Oh, people do a whole bunch of bad things for bad reasons. That would have been a perfect spot for this questioner to jump and say, is Islam dangerous?
That's what's their motivation. Is it because they don't want their priest to look bad? Well, that's a selfish motivation in Christianity.
But any motivation to protect their priest at all would be based on the idea that Christianity is the highest moral good, right? Like, was that unreasonable to suggest that?
If I may, the first time I ever heard about the pedophile priest thing was back in 1991. It was the very first report I'd ever heard of that, and it was a family in Louisiana that were very interested in prosecuting, and the church refused to allow it. And one of the representatives, they had a priest. He was up on charges. They had evidence against him, and the governor of Louisiana at the time pardoned the priest because he was a priest. And because we can't question the clergy. But then when the family tried to go beyond the governor to prosecute through the church, their representative, some bishop, announced that if we were to, and this was in 1991, before all of this broke, he said, if the church were to prosecute every, as he phrased it, homosexual pedophile priest, the church would be in the litigation in the billions of dollars. That was 1991. So they already knew that there was a problem. The family had already been made aware, you are not defeating the richest criminal organization there ever was.
Okay, that's enough, I think. What's the sum up? What's the sum up here? Number one, this was a stupid debate. I'm going to use the word stupid because it's a strong word. Is Christianity dangerous? Is a stupid question. Because the obvious answer is it depends. It depends on how you define Christianity. It depends on certain situations. It's like asking, is water dangerous? Is hydrogen cyanide in solution dangerous? Is Islam dangerous? I think Aaron Ra, he missed so many opportunities to really make Michael Jones uncomfortable. Oh, there were so many opportunities to make Michael Jones uncomfortable. And the biggest one's on my screen here. Get him to publicly say, based on scientific data, the question is Islam's dangerous? There's no scientific evidence for that. Get him to say that publicly. He basically did, but not in those exact words. Oh, there's going to be so many Christian followers like, unsubscribe, no longer giving you money in the Patreon account. What else? I think Michael made some great points that just because something is false doesn't mean it's necessarily dangerous. That was Aaron Ra's main, I think, point. How can it not be dangerous to believe the false things that just not true, made up fairy tales? How can that not be dangerous? Well, Homo sapiens, Aaron Ra, have been believing in fairy tales for a long, long time, and it's helped us survive. It's why we exist. Sometimes believing in fantasy is beneficial. So that was a horrible point by Aaron Ra, in my opinion. And Aaron Ra, if you watch this, I doubt if you will, but if you do, I think you agree with me now in retrospect, right? Or agree with that you kind of goofed up when you said, how is it not dangerous? And you missed opportunities, Aaron Ra, and even Darkin here in the live stream chat, I think it was Darkin, who said, give specific verses where Jesus himself says, cut off your own hand if you think it's going to cause you to spend eternity in hell. So, someone can put that verse in the live stream chat. And then just point blank ask Michael if that version of Christianity is dangerous. Get Michael to say that Islam is not dangerous based on peer-reviewed scientific results, studies, and get him to admit that some versions of Christianity are indeed dangerous, or some situations, some things. I think Michael would have admitted that Christians do dangerous things, but get him to get really close to the theology part, that they do these because Jesus specifically said it. They cut off their hand. They're crazy. Their interpretation's crazy, but they actually did what Jesus said. They didn't do what he meant, of course, because, what Jesus said and what Jesus meant are two different things. But these people do. They do what Jesus said. Whatever you ask in my name, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will do for you. And that includes healing your daughter of some serious illness. So you don't have to go to the hospital. There's a lot of Christians, not a lot, there's some who believe this. My sister was one of them. Oh, I have music to play. Yeah, how many people have suffered from dihydrogen monoxide poisoning? Many people. Dihydrogen monoxide is very dangerous. But unfortunately, there's no scientific evidence to prove that, other than the death of people drowning. Waiting on the rapture, says Dickinson. This is why I have a YouTube channel. I'm just killing time before Jesus comes. Epic Christ says, I will give you the source of who wrote the Gospels. Oh, yes. Let me do it for you. Eusebius said that a guy named Papias said that a guy named John said that a guy named Mark said that a guy named Peter said that a guy named Jesus said stuff. There you go. I did it for you, Epic Christ. Don't you hate it when I put it that way? Makes it seem shaky, right? I said that to Michael Lacona. He didn't like it. I tell ya, doing stuff like this gives me so much meaning and purpose. Poof! Thanks, guys. My apologies to Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy, who was scheduled to come on, but we ran out of time.